Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered if you were enough? Not just in appearance, not just in how you look, but in how you feel as a man, as a partner, as someone who wants to be desired and respected. That silent question, am I enough, is one that most men never say out loud. But it sits there, deep inside, shaping the way you move, the way you love, the way you connect. And if you've ever felt that quiet insecurity, I want you to know something very important. You're not alone, and you don't have to keep living under its weight. The truth is, society has built a very narrow definition of masculinity. Everywhere you turn, there are messages telling you that your worth depends on how tall you are, how much you earn, how strong you look, or how you perform in bed. These messages are powerful. They get into your head, into your heart, and slowly start to convince you that confidence is something you have to prove, not something you can feel. But that's not true. Confidence isn't about what you show the world. It's about what you know within yourself. It's not built on comparison, it's built on conviction. Most people think confidence comes from changing something about their body or their life. But research in psychology shows the opposite. Real confidence starts when you stop measuring yourself by external standards and start creating a sense of internal certainty, a deep belief that who you are, as you are, holds value. Studies from Harvard and Stanford have found that when men shift focus from performance to presence, from trying to impress to trying to connect, their relationships become stronger, their intimacy deepens, and their partners feel more emotionally fulfilled. What this means is that your power doesn't lie in what you can prove. It lies in how deeply you can connect, with yourself first, and then with the person you love. When you start to understand this, you begin to see that the real transformation you're seeking isn't about physical size or appearance. It's about emotional presence. It's about energy. It's about the way you make someone feel when they're with you. That's what truly lasts. So, I want you to stay with me through this video because we're going to explore something far more powerful than any surface-level change. We're going to talk about how to build a natural sense of masculine energy that radiates confidence, trust, and attraction. Not because of what you look like, but because of how you carry yourself, how you breathe, how you speak, and how you connect. This is about reclaiming your self-worth from the false standards that have kept you feeling small. Imagine what it would feel like to walk into a room and not compare yourself to anyone. To know deep in your bones that your value doesn't depend on being perfect. It depends on being present. That kind of self-assurance changes everything. It changes the way you communicate, the way your partner responds to you, and even the way you experience desire and passion. Because when you're grounded in real confidence, you stop trying to perform and you start allowing yourself to be fully seen. And that, more than anything, is what creates lasting attraction. This isn't about pretending to be confident. It's about learning to be comfortable in your own skin. It's about understanding that the most magnetic quality a man can have is authenticity. When you're real, when you drop the act, when you stop comparing and start connecting, that's when your presence becomes powerful. That's when people notice. That's when your partner feels safe, desired, and drawn to you on a deeper level. So, if you've ever felt like you're not enough, this is your moment to let that go. Stay until the end, because what we're about to dive into will show you how to reconnect with your natural strength and confidence in a way that feels effortless, grounded, and real. This is where transformation begins, not by changing who you are, but by remembering who you've always been. Confidence grows from the inside out, and that growth begins the moment you decide to stop running from your insecurities. Most people try to fix what they see on the surface, hoping it will silence the deeper voice that says they're not enough. But the truth is, no amount of external change can quiet an internal belief that's rooted in fear. The only way to truly feel powerful is to face that fear, not by fighting it, but by understanding it. Fear thrives in silence. It loses its grip when you bring it into awareness and begin to see it for what it is. A story you've been told, not a fact about who you are. Psychologists call this process cognitive reframing, the ability to look at your thoughts not as truths, but as perspectives. When you start doing this, something shifts inside you. You realize that insecurity isn't proof of weakness, it's proof of awareness. It shows that you care, that you're paying attention, that you want to grow. And from that awareness comes the power to rewrite the script. Every time you challenge the thought that says, I'm not enough, you build a new neural pathway in your brain, one that associates self-worth with effort, not perfection. Over time, these small mental shifts turn into emotional strength, and that strength changes how you show up in every part of your life. Think about how you communicate when you're confident versus when you're uncertain. When you're confident, your tone is steady, your breathing is calm, and your energy is grounded. When you're uncertain, everything tightens, your voice, your posture, even your thoughts. The body mirrors the mind. That's why the fastest way to start building confidence is through awareness of your physical state. Studies from the University of British Columbia show that posture alone can increase testosterone and decrease cortisol, the stress hormone, within minutes. That means when you stand tall, breathe deeply, and open your chest, you're not just looking more confident, you're teaching your brain to feel that way. This isn't about faking it, it's about aligning your body and mind so they speak the same language. Confidence isn't an act, it's an alignment. It's what happens when your thoughts, emotions, and physiology begin to support each other instead of working against each other. When you learn to center your energy, you stop leaking power through self-doubt. You stop chasing validation and start radiating self-assurance. Your partner feels that difference instantly. They can sense when you're emotionally grounded, when your presence feels secure and calm. That safety creates attraction. It builds trust. It invites intimacy that can't be forced or performed. There's something magnetic about a man who's at peace with himself. Not because he's perfect, but because he's real. His confidence doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't try to dominate. It simply exists, steady and unshakable. When you cultivate this inner strength, you naturally become more attractive, not just physically, but energetically. You draw people toward you because they can feel your certainty. You're not seeking approval, you're offering presence. This is what emotional mastery feels like. It's not the absence of fear, it's the understanding that fear doesn't control you anymore. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that no external situation defines your worth. When you reach that place, your relationships change. You communicate with more clarity, more honesty, more empathy. You stop reacting from insecurity and start responding from strength. And that shift, though invisible to the eye, transforms everything. How you love, how you connect, how you see yourself. Every moment of awareness is an opportunity to reclaim a piece of yourself that you once gave away to doubt. The more you practice this, the stronger your sense of self becomes. And when that happens, you stop trying to prove your value. You start living it. You begin to realize that confidence isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. It's been within you all along, waiting for you to stop seeking outside and start looking within. When you begin to trust yourself, something incredible happens. Your energy shifts. You no longer walk through life as if you're being judged. You stop carrying that hidden tension that makes you overthink every word, every gesture, every moment. Instead, you start to breathe again. You start to live in your own rhythm. That's when confidence stops being an idea and starts becoming a state of being. It's no longer about trying to appear powerful, it's about knowing you already are. And that awareness changes everything, especially in your relationships. In relationships, energy speaks louder than words. You can say all the right things, but if your energy is uncertain, it's felt. The human brain is wired for emotional attunement. Mirror neurons pick up the emotions of the person in front of us within seconds. This means your partner feels your self-doubt even before you speak it. They sense your hesitation, your need for reassurance, your quiet insecurity. But they also feel your strength, your calm, your confidence. Emotional presence is contagious. When you're grounded, you invite your partner to relax into your energy. You create a field of safety around them, and in that safety, real intimacy begins to grow. This is why emotional connection always starts with self-connection. You cannot give what you haven't cultivated. If you want your partner to trust you, you have to first trust yourself. If you want them to feel desired, you must first feel worthy of desire. So many relationships fall apart not because love fades, but because insecurity builds walls where there should be openness. Fear turns communication into competition. But when you show up with grounded confidence, you don't need to defend your worth. You demonstrate it through presence. You listen with curiosity instead of defensiveness. You express your needs without guilt or fear. You offer love without needing control. That's what makes a relationship emotionally mature and magnetically alive. Think about how rare it is today to meet someone who is truly present. Someone who looks you in the eye, listens without distraction, and makes you feel seen. That level of attention is one of the deepest forms of attraction. Presence says, "You matter. I'm here." And yet, you can only give that level of presence when your mind isn't consumed with doubt. When you stop asking, "Am I enough?" You make space for a new question. How can I connect more deeply right now? That single shift in focus, from insecurity to connection, transforms how you experience love, passion, and intimacy. Every human being longs to feel connected. It's hardwired into our biology. The hormone oxytocin, often called the bonding chemical, is released when we feel emotionally close to someone. But here's what's fascinating. Oxytocin is also released when you connect compassionately with yourself. This means that self-acceptance doesn't just feel good emotionally, it changes your chemistry. It lowers stress, increases confidence, and strengthens your ability to bond. So when you practice self-compassion, you're not being selfish. You're preparing yourself to love more deeply and more authentically. There's a quiet kind of power in a person who knows they belong, not because someone else told them so, but because they've decided it's true. That decision to belong to yourself is what frees you from the endless chase for validation. It's what makes you magnetic without trying. The paradox of attraction is that you become most desirable when you stop seeking approval and start embodying self-respect. That's when your energy becomes unmistakably real, calm, centered, and deeply alive. The moment you begin living from that place, everything around you starts to respond differently. Conversations flow more easily. Connection feels natural. You stop trying to prove your worth and start expressing it through every breath, every word, every look. That is the essence of natural confidence. Not something built on ego or comparison, but something grounded in truth. And when you live from that truth, you don't just feel more confident. You become the kind of person who inspires confidence in others. Real transformation begins when you stop chasing the image of confidence and start embodying the feeling of self-respect. You can't fake the energy of someone who knows their worth. It's felt in the smallest details. The way you carry yourself, the way you pause before reacting, the calm that follows you, even in silence. That kind of energy doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction, your presence becomes magnetic. People are drawn to you not because you're loud or dominant, but because your energy feels safe, centered, and certain. True confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need validation or attention. It's the quiet knowing that you can handle whatever life gives you, that you can face rejection without losing your value, and face love without fear of being seen. This balance is rare, but it's built through self-awareness. The more you understand your emotional patterns, the triggers, the doubts, the protective masks you wear, the easier it becomes to choose a different response. Self-awareness turns reaction into reflection and reflection into power. That's how emotional maturity is born. When you bring this kind of awareness into a relationship, everything deepens. You no longer interpret your partner's mood as a reflection of your worth. You stop seeking constant reassurance because your foundation is internal, not external. This stability creates freedom, both for you and for them. Love stops being a place of pressure and starts becoming a place of peace. Your partner feels that shift. They feel the difference between a love that clings and a love that stands tall. One drains energy, the other restores it. The reason this matters so much is because emotional safety is the foundation of attraction. People don't open their hearts to those who seem perfect. They open them to those who feel real. When you show up with grounded confidence, not pretending, not performing, but being fully yourself, You invite the same honesty in return. Vulnerability becomes a bridge instead of a risk. It says, I'm secure enough to be seen. That kind of openness breaks down years of distance and brings back the closeness many couples lose without realizing it. And here's something powerful. When you operate from inner strength, your communication changes. You start listening more deeply, not to reply, but to understand. You speak with purpose instead of impulse. You express emotions clearly without turning them into blame. That's emotional intelligence in action, and it's one of the most attractive traits a person can have. Studies show that emotional intelligence predicts long-term relationship satisfaction far more accurately than appearance or status ever could. Because love at its core isn't sustained by excitement, it's sustained by understanding. To embody this kind of confidence, you must start treating yourself the way you wish others would treat you. Respect yourself in your thoughts. Speak to yourself with kindness. Hold yourself accountable without shame. These small, quiet moments of self-respect shape your identity far more than any external success ever could. Every time you choose to pause instead of react, to forgive instead of resent, to express instead of suppress, you reinforce your worth. Confidence becomes less about proving and more about being honest, being compassionate, being grounded. When you reach this level of inner clarity, you stop asking, what do they think of me? And start asking, how do I make them feel? That single question shifts the entire dynamic of connection. Because when your presence uplifts others, it reflects the peace you've created within yourself. You no longer need to convince anyone of your value. They feel it naturally. And when that happens, love doesn't have to be chased or controlled. It flows effortlessly toward the energy that feels most real. The greatest shift you can make in your life and relationships begins the moment you stop living in reaction and start living with intention. Most people spend their lives reacting to opinions, to expectations, to fears that were planted long ago. They measure their worth by how others see them and end up losing touch with who they truly are. But intention changes everything. Intention gives direction to your energy. It turns uncertainty into purpose and transforms ordinary moments into powerful choices. When you start choosing your thoughts, your actions, and your emotional responses consciously, you stop being controlled by the past and start shaping your future. Psychology shows that our brains are wired for patterns. We repeat what feels familiar, even when it doesn't serve us, because the mind finds comfort in predictability. That's why so many people stay stuck in cycles of insecurity, overthinking, or emotional disconnection. Not because they want to, but because it feels safe to stay where the mind knows what to expect. But comfort is not the same as peace. Real peace comes from alignment, not avoidance. It's the calm that arrives when your actions finally reflect your truth. When you live with intention, you replace reaction with awareness. Instead of being pulled by fear, you're guided by clarity. You no longer say, I can't help how I feel. You begin to say, I can choose what I do with how I feel. That shift is where emotional power is born. In relationships, intention changes the energy between two people. When you bring awareness into how you communicate, touch, and listen, connection deepens naturally. Most emotional distance isn't caused by a lack of love, but by a lack of presence. One partner speaks from fear, the other listens from defense, and over time, both start feeling unseen. But when you choose to stay present, when you breathe before reacting, when you listen without interrupting, when you speak with clarity instead of accusation, you reset the emotional rhythm. You remind both yourself and your partner that love is not about control. It's about understanding. Intentional communication builds trust, and trust builds attraction. When your partner knows that your words are thoughtful and your actions consistent, they begin to relax into the relationship. They stop guarding themselves. They feel safe to open up, to express, to be vulnerable. And that's where intimacy thrives, not in constant excitement, but in emotional safety. Studies on long-term relationship satisfaction show that couples who practice mindful communication report stronger attraction over time because emotional safety keeps desire alive. When you feel emotionally seen, Physical connection becomes deeper and more meaningful. Every moment gives you a choice to react or to respond. Reaction is automatic. It's driven by fear, pride, or insecurity. Response is intentional. It comes from awareness, patience, and confidence. The more you practice responding with intention, the more control you gain over your emotional world. You begin to trust yourself in every situation, not because everything goes your way, but because you know you can handle it with strength and grace. That's true emotional maturity. That's real power. You become magnetic when your energy is steady. You no longer try to prove, chase, or force connection. You simply show up as yourself, calm, focused, authentic. And that energy draws people toward you because it feels safe, honest, and grounded. You stop needing to convince anyone of your worth. Your presence does the speaking. That's what intention creates: quiet authority, the kind of confidence that doesn't need to perform. Every relationship, including the one with yourself, grows stronger when it's built on awareness and choice. The more you live with intention, the more your life starts to feel aligned. You begin to experience a calm sense of control, not over others, but over yourself. And from that place of inner stability, everything, love, attraction, success, connection, begins to unfold naturally, without force, without fear, without pretending.